Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Victory Never Sleeps. As you can see, we are joined by the lovely Gyðja Lauren Anderson. Lauren, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone.
Before we get into the meat of the program, GW Farnsworth, as always, started us off with a $30 donation. Thank you so much. Your consistent generosity is very much appreciated. Guys may have noticed that each week I am harassing you about our continuing efforts to pay off Njords off. Doing it because it's effective and we're making a lot of progress, so bear with me. We are at 84.2% of the way paid off, which is substantial progress. We are getting close, guys. There's 38,745 remaining. You guys have been extremely generous and continue to be so, and we're very appreciative of it. We're trying to see how fast we can get this paid off. Paying it off is going to be our first step to getting phrase off. It seems like a lot, and it is a lot. This is our most expensive HOF so far due to its location and some other factors, but it's really impressive and it's really amazing that we have been able to pay off, as I said, 84.2% of the cost of it in less than 3 years. That is a tremendous amount of progress, and it's due to y'all's continued generosity. So thank you guys very much for that. If you are interested in helping with that, the link is runestone.org/donate. Anything you can do is appreciated. Anybody who, over the course of things, donates $500 or more gets their name on the plaque, the donor plaque inside the HOF. Many of you have stepped up and done that, and it's much appreciated, and we're making sure your names are there for all to see for the ages. And so I also give you guys kind of the figure. This breaks down to $53 per AFA member pays this thing off tonight were that to happen. So thank you guys very much. Also, a couple of other pieces of business. We have Midsummer at Odenshof coming up. This is our big 30th anniversary celebration. This is going to be a big one. This is likely to be the largest event of the year. It is at the AFA's first HOF this is almost 10 years for this HOF. We found Odenshof directly following our Midsummer celebration in 2015. And so done some amazing things with the property. We have our folks out there taking such good care of it. That's in Brownsville, California. If you can make it, June 27th through the 29th, we would love to see you there. We would love to show off Odenshof to all of you guys. And anybody here, if you are a member, fantastic. You should be there. Get with your folk builder. We'll get you all squared away. And if you're not, we'd still like you to stop by. I would love to meet you. And any of our folk builders can get you all set up. Also, the following month in July, we have the third annual Sigger Bloat at Siggerheim. That's in Jackson County, Tennessee. It's going to be July 25th through the 27th. I would love to meet any and all of you out there. It's a very special spot in a very special place. We would really like to, get you guys to see it and experience it firsthand. This is going to be the location of the AFA's capital as we move forward. Mandy and myself are going to move to the county as soon as we're able. A number of other leaders and members would like to move there as well. We've got big things in store. It will eventually be the grounds we build Tiershof on. So I invite you all to come check it out. It's a really special place. And same goes. If you're a member, you should be there. We'd love to see you there. Get with your folk builder, you're not a member, we'd still love you to stop by and check it out. And I'd love to get to meet you. And yeah, so if you're in that part of the country, or you can be, I'd love to see you there. That's what I've got for the top of the program. Brandy bought us 5 coffees. That is a $25 donation. Thank you, Brandy. We appreciate it. So I invite everybody to ask questions. If this catches you later and you have a question you want asked on the show, please send it our way at vns@runestone.org, and we'll answer it on the following show. Before we get into taking questions, I know you were on the program week before last with Brandy, but for folks that might be just joining, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, how you came to Asatru, and how you came to the Asatru Folk Assembly in specific?
Sure, of course. So I think my first AFA gathering that I went to was maybe in about 2006, according to kind of the records that I saved of the time. It's about 2006. I have a kind of a keepsake member appreciation letter where the AFA had just started to keep like a membership database at that time in 2006. So that's a really nice keepsake to have. And around the same time, I had the maybe it was my first gathering, I think, perhaps the midsummer of 2006, that was held at Founder McNallen and Gyðja McNallen's residence. I have the flyer for that. So I believe that was probably the first gathering that I went to. So it's about 2006. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So 2006 at the McNallen's home, how large of a gathering was that back then?
No, I don't think it was that large. I think at that time we did a lot of, as I remember, there were some restaurant gatherings, like the Sizzler or various restaurants, and it was really fun. I remember that people would just come if they were available, have a meal together, and yeah, at that time it was at the McNallen's house, and I have really fond memories of that time. So yeah.
Yeah, for perspective, the AFA was 11 years old at that point.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, it was very, very much a West Coast and a specifically Northern California centered organization. We had international members, we had members across the country, but very, very sparsely, and it was very much the center of activity was not only just in Northern California, but centered around largely around one's home.
Yeah. I feel really fortunate to have been in Northern California when that was taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely in the right place at the right time for that. So we got a couple of questions coming in. One from Brandy. I'm a huge Gyðja Lauren fan. Gyðja, could you tell us about some of your academic interests? What do you like to study other than Asatru?
Well, I'm not sure how many people know this, but I studied theater at UCLA, at University of California, Los Angeles. And one of those years was over in England. I studied mostly Shakespearean acting and some art history as a minor. I'm kind of a big artsy person, I suppose. But yeah, that's what I mainly studied in college. I got my bachelor's in theater from the School of Theater, Film, and Television at UCLA. I also had some really great classes. I think I told you about this, Brandy, but one of our textbooks for the Go There program was the Jesse Byock Viking language book. And I was fortunate enough to have his class at UCLA, his Viking class. So it was really fun. I remember learning especially from him, and that was really a lot of fun. So yeah,
That's an
I at
awesome.
UCLA I was yeah. I almost got like a double major in Indo-European studies and theater, but they didn't want anyone who was getting a theater major to get a double major, so they didn't let us do that. So, but I took the classes anyway. So
That's fantastic. What was your favorite Shakespeare work?
my husband will not like this because he doesn't like this one, but for some reason, like Midsummer Night's Dream, kind of, I kind of like that one. I that may be my husband's least favorite one because everyone really likes it. But for maybe it's just because I've been in a couple of shows. I've been in a couple of live shows of that one, like during the summer, and it's kind of this like magical time, during the summer, kind of fun energy to do a live play. And so I have like fond memories of doing that play. I also like, and I know you're not supposed to say this on a stage, but I suppose it's okay here, the Macbeth Macbeth show. I've been in that a couple times, and I really like that one. Um, a couple of them have some really strong kind of folk memory type things in them, which is fun, which is one of the things I always enjoyed about Shakespeare.
When you say you've been in them, do you mean performing on stage?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so not
Yeah.
behind the scenes stuff, but like upfront
No.
roles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What'd you play in Macbeth?
I in Macbeth, I played Lady Macduff two times, I believe, and I played Lady Macbeth once. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that about you either. That's great. Very.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
I bet that's outstanding. I've never had any experience like that. That's really cool. Tracy would like to know. I've been wondering if Gythia Lauren would like to tell us her story. Luckily, she's starting to do that now. How did she find Asatru, and what are her future plans and goals?
That's a good question. Hi, Tracy. So I guess um I won't bore everyone with the long story, but well,
That's
before
what we're here for. Bore us. Go.
okay, I guess we have a lot of time. So in college, when I went to UCLA, at that time, I had been what I would consider Wiccan, as a lot of women were at that time. I was Wiccan until I went to college. And then there was a student organization, religious organization on campus that was headed by my soon-to-be friend, and we would co-head this after I got there, was the Pagan Circle. Um, and she recommended a book to me at one point, which was, I believe, the Freya Aswyn's book, Northern Mysteries and Magic. And she said, "Oh, I found this interesting religious tradition. Like, I don't know what you'll think about it. I kind of hear it's patriarchal or something, but you know, but check it out." So I checked it out, and then we both at one point did this kind of utiseta. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that perfectly, but we kind of went out to this national forest in Los Angeles together, and kind of both, you know, converted from Wicca to Asatru because we both found so much in it that we found to be, um, personally very, rewarding. And I also had my first encounter with Odin, whom I've always been very deeply devoted to, is Odin. And so at that time I thought, well, I've definitely found my home, and I've never looked back from that point. So that was, maybe 20 years or so ago, 23, 24 years. So that's how I found it, was my friend at UCLA when we were running the pagan circle.
What happened to your friend?
I haven't spoken to her for a while. I think that she perhaps went the more universalist type route. Um, I don't believe she joined the AFA. She was at my wedding. I think at some point, I think I will call her out of the blue and say hello because I do still have so much fondness for her. So I will call her and say hello. But she doesn't belong to the AFA. But yeah, she was my wedding. You were too.
I was. I remember that.
Yeah. I hope that answered your question, Tracy. If you have anything else, just let me know.
So Corey would like to know, Gyðja Lauren, what's your favorite Asatru holiday and why?
Okay. Well, I have a special fondness for Midsummer, because my husband and I were married then in 2012, um, when AFA was still doing gatherings up in Camp Norgay, Northern California, in like the Alta area. So we had our wedding ceremony there. So I kind of will always have a fondness for that time. Um, Yes, I kind of have a fondness for like the liminal times of the year, kind of like, winter nights, kind of Halloween time when the veil is a little bit thin. I really feel it in the air. And I feel like it's a really like powerful time for individual and group ritual and introspection. But I really love Yule as well. I've always really loved, before I was Asatru, before I was anything, there was like the Christmas time, and I always felt a really magical kind of feeling about that time of year. Just it was a wonderful time to be with family and friends, and I love All Father Odin, and all the legends about him being in the wild hunt and everything during the time of Yule. That always really inspires me. It's a kind of a powerful time of year. So I do like that time as well. So not a simple answer, but it's true.
So that's three. If you had
Yeah.
to choose between those three,
Probably Yule. Probably Yule. Yeah, it's a special time of year, isn't it?
no, it absolutely is. I think everybody, I don't know about everybody, but I think lots and lots and lots of us have endless positive associations with that time of year.
And you get 12 days for one holiday, so what's
That's
better?
true.
There you go.
It's a good value for a holiday.
So, next, Dom Barnes wants to know, was Edred with the AFA then? No, as far as I'm aware, he was never a member of the Asatru Folk Assembly. He was a member of the Free Assembly back in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
But on and off, the McNallans have stayed close with him and are in, I don't know. I don't know what counts as regular contact, but are in, semi-frequent contact with him and kind of always have been. Did he have any specific interactions with the AFA during your early years in the AFA, Lauren?
None that I remember. And I don't believe that I met him. I know I met a lot of people probably, but I don't believe that I met him. But yeah, it would have been nice to meet him.
Yeah, I think he'd be a fascinating person to meet. And
definitely. I was influenced by his books and everything. So.
Okay, so what is your favorite book by Edred?
I think that I like Rune Lore or Futhark are the kind of the good standards to read. I worked through a lot of the 9 doors of Midgard, rune work. Um, and I've been meaning to actually work through it again. That's one of my things I've been working on. So because I really enjoy working with the runes.
The prescribed way, or did you abbreviate for your own needs?
Well, I'm not sure exactly.
I was going to say, because it's
It's a lot, isn't it? Hmm.
okay. It looks like we're back. There was some kind of something going on there. Maybe it was on my
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, I see you now.
Okay, so I was going to say it was some absurd amount of time on
Yeah.
each of those doors. And I
Yes,
think
it was.
I tried a few times.
Hmm.
I made it through the first 2 doors the
Hmm.
long way. I didn't have the patience for it when I first started it. And it's one of those, I think, some of doing it his prescribed very, very long way. And the patient, like the exercising of the patience, I think is part of as I've grown up, I think that's part of the value to it.
Right.
But yeah, no, anybody listening, that's a really interesting book. And I think that especially the early doors, I can't personally speak to the later doors as far as the value they bring going through them. I've done some of the exercises, but I got a lot out of that. One of the things that I tell people a lot, and I try to make sure our Gothar students do, came from that book. And I think this is useful for anybody listening, and I find I don't check back in on it as often as I should, but I do still periodically, is he has you write a journal
Mhm.
of, like, I think he phrases it like your Leostav qualities and your Merkstav qualities, your good things and your bad things, your strengths and your weaknesses. And not for public consumption, but just so you can be brutally honest with yourself. And I think that when we say brutally honest, it means like, don't lie to yourself and like admit to all your faults. But I think it's equally important, and I think he may make this point as well in there, to write down your good qualities without worrying that you sound like a braggart. If there are things you genuinely think are exceptional about yourself, put them down.
Mhm.
And then check back in to see what progress or, backsliding you've done on those lists over time.
Mhm.
I found that very, very valuable. And I think everybody
Yeah.
would do well to incorporate that in a structured writing it down and then checking back in way. And I think you might be surprised in a good way on some of the things that you do improve with over time.
I feel like it encourages like a healthy development of the ego. So
I think so.
it's very good. Mhm.
Gyðja Lauren, when do you plan on visiting Njordshof, the bestest Hof in Florida?
What
It
I
is the best
hear.
Hof in Florida. I think that's undisputed.
I really would love to visit Njordshof. Hopefully next year. Hopefully next year. I really wanted to come this year, but I wasn't able to. But next year I hope to. I believe maybe perhaps the only travel I'll do this year to another Hof is to Baldershof in August. I think that my husband and I will both go to the Freyfaxi gathering. But yeah, I have fond memories of Florida. My grandmother lived in Florida, and I have kind of fond memories of visiting her in Florida. So I really do look forward to that. And I've seen all the wonderful photos for all the gatherings, and I just really want to see you guys. So, yeah, I look forward to meeting you all.
It's neat. I'd encourage everybody out there, if you have the ability, or when you have the ability, rather, visiting all of our Hoffs is a special thing to do. People have been calling it a bloat fair, or like a pilgrimage, for lack of a better term, a bloat journey to each of our Hoffs. And a number of members have done that so far. And, I don't know anybody who's done that and then regretted it, or, man, that was a waste, or, man, I shouldn't have done it. I know a lot of people who've done it and thought it was extremely powerful. Each of the Hoffs, excuse me, each of the Hoffs has a really different feel to it and a different energy when you're there. And it's hard to convey if you haven't been there, but something really special happens when we dedicate these Hoffs, and, a piece of our gods resides there and inhabits that space. And I think it's very palpable to those of us who've been there and experienced it. And I would, wish that for all our folk, that they get the opportunity to experience that in, at least one of, but hopefully each of our Hoffs.
In our membership, in our monthly district call in Odenshof this month, I believe, if you're going to be a part of that call, we're going to be talking about Blotferd, the pilgrimage to other Hoffs. So if you'd like to join us for that, we'd love to see you there.
From Mandy, Lauren's voice is so calming. I want her to read me bedtime stories. Brandy says, I agree with Mandy. Could there be audio of Lauren reading old folk stories to us?
Well, thank you, ladies. Some of you perhaps in Odenshof have been around for. I've been the first Friday of the month. We do a first Friday for Frigg, Daughters of Frigg virtual tea, and I've been doing these guided meditations. And some folks would like me to record those, so we were thinking of doing that for the perhaps the YouTube channel, or making a separate YouTube channel for that.
You should absolutely.
So maybe we'll do that. So
no, I think you've got a really good voice for it too. I think that cadence and everything. I'm really curious. I think that would be great.
Thank you. I'm just glad that people get something out of it. That's all I hope for.
Rachel would like to know, Gyðja Anderson, what initiatives or goals do you hope to start for the women of the AFA?
That's a good question. I would like every woman in the AFA to know that they belong. First of all, that there is a place for you in this religious community. That perhaps there's a reputation of Asatru, as I was saying when I first discovered Asatru. My friend was like, my female friend was, I've heard it's patriarchal kind of thing, but it's really, there are a lot of women in Asatru, and they are just like waiting to embrace their sisters. We did Sarah Alt probably has talked about this, but there was a sisters coming home kind of egg ritual that we did this year, where we decorated eggs with symbols and everything, and it was a prayer for sisters to come home to the AFA, to find the AFA, and we did that, and we kind of were burning the eggs in the Sumer Mall fires and fires of May Day, praying for our sisters, for our women to come home. And there are many women in Asatru, and we need them to know that they belong, and they're just as important as anyone else, and they're very valued. And if anyone has any other questions, just please let me know, and I can answer any questions for you. Yeah.
All right. So traveling back to days of yore, when you got involved in the AFA, what would you say I don't know. I mean, we've said it a lot on here, so I don't want to like feed you something to confirm. How would you describe the difference in the membership demographics of 2025's AFA versus 20, you say 2006 when you joined, or anything thereabouts?
Actually, I want to say that there are actually perhaps more young people these days that I'm seeing, which is really encouraging. It's very, very encouraging. Um, Perhaps there are more people kind of moving from other traditions to Asatru back then, but these days there are a lot more young people that are finding something very life affirming and powerful in Asatru that they can't find anywhere else, and we can offer that for them, to men and women, to anybody, and we really hope that people come and find us because a lot of the things that people say about us aren't true. It's really true.
So, I guess expanding on that,
hmm
what what would you? I mean, how would you describe differences in the AFA of 2025 versus the AFA of 2006?
I would say that it is very much more organized these days. Very much more well organized, and it's very much. I mean, it's a lot bigger too. It's a lot bigger because we didn't have Hofs back then. We didn't have physical places where we went to go worship every month. Like it's absolutely amazing that we have that. I think perhaps people, take that for granted. Maybe these days that we have Hofs to go to every month, or actually, anytime. If you're a member, you can go to a Hof anytime you want. Like that's absolutely amazing. That is a dream that we had for so long. I remember, I have memories of kind of looking around for land, like in the car. We were driving around looking at places I was with Gothi Thorgrim Odin and his wife Katie in Odenshof. You know them if you're in Odenshof. And Founder McNallen and Hofgeithia Sheila McNallen. We were looking around at land, and it hadn't happened yet, but it has happened now. And it's just so amazing. We're so blessed. We're so blessed to have what we have. And that's a big thing. It's a big thing.
Yeah, I remark on here sometimes, these kids today, it's such a double-edged sword. Many of the prospective members and new members of the AFA, and even not so new anymore, they just take Hofs as a given. Like, of course there's Hofs. How come there's not a Hof in my town or in my neighborhood? Like, how come there's not 5 Hofs in my town? The fact that we've come so far to where people assume or expect that is in a way gratifying and a testament to how far we've come. But it's also, they will never know the struggle that it was when a lot of us got involved, to where that getting that first Hof established was this elusive dream that we all planned and schemed and theorized, and wouldn't it be wonderful if, and being able to live in a day and an age where that's happened, other Hofs have happened, and to where that's now I don't know if common is the right word, but a everyday part of our AFA experience, is just such a such a different thing, and it's a reality that many of us, wouldn't have dreamed would be possible. That idea of maybe having one Hoff was like the biggest, that's how high the bar was set, and it was an insurmountable accomplishment. It's amazing once that first Hoff became a reality, how quickly we were able to get additional Hoffs and continue to do so.
People didn't imagine back then that we would have, 4 Hoffs. And land, to build another one. It's amazing.
Yeah. When we got that first Hoff, that was like, oh, the Hoff. Okay, cool. We have the Hoff now. As if that's the only, because again, it's hard to, when you set your sights on a goal for so long. And as I mentioned before, reading, some of the first rune stones, I remember rune stones from the early 80s. Any day now we're going to have a Hoff, and we're going to have land, and we're going to have this Hoff, we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And, it took almost 30 years, over 30 years from that point to get that first Hoff. So it's quite a thing. And that's one of the reasons that we try so hard to get all of you to come join us at one of our Hoffs. Is we have worked so hard for them, and they're such a blessing and such a powerful thing when you're at them that, there's nothing we can do on here to express that with the same visceralness of you actually experiencing it. So if you haven't been, I'd really encourage everybody, please, make the effort, go out of your way. We would love to show you and, experience that with you. Or, I mentioned one of the things as Gothar that's most gratifying is when you're able to be there and in some way help facilitate someone having that religious experience where their eyes get opened and this faith is made real to them in a more visceral way. And, if we're able to achieve that ever, it's a huge accomplishment. And that's what we live for. So we would love to be able to help everybody experience that.
Yeah.
So Whitten Young says, glad to have Gyðja Lauren on the team. Tell us, how did you come to be a Gyðja?
Well, I believe that I've been thinking about it all my life, really. I guess that's kind of what it comes to. Since I was really like a very small girl, I thought of the world as very like holy. And I grew up in the Unitarian Church, which is obviously very different than our faith. But I grew up feeling like the world was very like an enchanted, magical place, and something I wanted to be a big part of. My mother tells me about I would kind of make altars to things growing up when I was little, and she didn't know what they were to, and I don't even know to this day. But I think it was probably for the same reason that I really wanted to be a part of the world that I felt was like a magical place. I wanted to be a part of the world. I wanted to help people. I've always really found personal fulfillment in helping people, making them feel better, connecting them to things that would make them happier. So I feel like this was kind of a natural fit for me, spiritually and otherwise. So my parents both had like masters in psychology, so I kind of grew up around a lot of psychology kind of books and kind of that kind of language. So, and I always kind of helped my friends with issues they were going through and everything. So I really enjoyed talking to people, helping them through things. If anyone ever has anything they need help with, just just let me know. Write me an email or call me. I'm always here for you. I hope that answers that okay.
Well, it does. Tell us a little bit about that. I think when you say that you were raised Unitarian, I hear of a lot of people that, get like a mail order ordination through that kind of an outfit, but I don't hear a lot of people that were raised in that as if that was their faith growing up. What was that like for those that, don't know about it?
I'm not actually sure if that's the same. Is that the same exact thing? I'm not actually sure, and because the Unitarian thing that you get, that you like Universal Life Church kind of thing, the certificate through the
I
mail.
don't know
I'm
if
not
they're
sure.
affiliated or not. I'm not making the assumption that they are, but every
Yeah.
time I've known anyone talk about being a Unitarian, it was kind of
Yeah.
that they wanted to get ordained and
Yeah.
be somebody, but they didn't really want to go through a
Yeah.
structured thing, so they went that
Yeah.
route.
Yeah, I know that's definitely the Universal Life Church. I'm not sure how much of a connection there is, but yeah, the Unitarian Universalists are, I think, perhaps someone else could answer this better than me, but I think some of our founding fathers were involved in the Unitarian Church. Perhaps Jefferson. I don't even know, but actually, you'll find them in various towns. Like I grew up in Sacramento, California, and so I would go to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Sacramento, California. And it was just kind of a blending of various faith traditions. It's a little bit different than what we do, but there was something good about it too. But I believe a lot of secular humanists also were in it, so they could go and find some spiritual kind of fulfillment without being too tied down to something really, tied down in orthodoxy or something. So.
I skipped a question somewhere. Now I'm trying to go back and find it. All right. So Brandy wants to know, what are some of your favorite books, Asatru related and not Asatru related?
Wow. Not Asatru related. I just have to bring up this amazing performance I went to the other week. I'd have to say, probably at this point, like my favorite book is like the Lord of the Rings, but all like 3 books kind of into one, or movie also into one. And folk builder Daniel Odom and his wife and I and my husband went to the San Francisco Symphony. They were doing a showing of The Two Towers, which is the second movie in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And as that is like kind of my favorite book, my favorite movie. It was really amazing. They did like the symphony, the score of the movie, and the choral background of the movie at the same time that we were watching the whole movie. It was really amazing. But that one, that was kind of it's fresh in my mind because it was just the other week. So I have to bring that up. The third one is next year, so it's not too late if anyone else wants to go with us. You can get your tickets still in July. But that is perhaps my favorite non-Asatru book, is Christopher Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, like all 3 kind of together. I really love The Hobbit too. Non-Asatru, Asatru wise, I would recommend Deep Ancestors, Culture of the Teutons, the Imperium Press edition. I'm starting a really good book. I've started into it, The Horse, the Wheel, and Language. That's really good. If anyone's read some of that.
If you're just starting that,
and
wait
then
till you get about 10 chapters in, and it's just pottery after pottery after pottery for like 10 chapters. But I love
that
it.
sounds like something my husband would say. He was an anthropology major at UCLA. We both went to UCLA. I was in theater. He was in anthropology, and he says it's all pot sherds. It's sherds. They find all these pot like sherds, and it's boring.
It's like 10 chapters of Horse the Wheel language.
But I'm also yeah.
Some of the best material makes you work for it. Some of the best material is a tedious read.
And of course, Founder McNallen's book, the Asatru Native European Spirituality, is amazing. It's an amazing book. Also, his book, The Spear, which is a little bit more political, but the first one is really amazing. They're both amazing. And anything by Evola. I'm reading The Mysteries of the Grail is another one I'm reading right now. So, yeah. If that didn't answer it enough, please ask me more.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I'm reading one of the upcoming questions here. Okay, so all right, first before I do that, Ben in Arizona donated $50 to VNS. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. Hi, Ben.
The message.
Hi, Desiree.
We are cheering for you, Lauren. Hail the ICER, hail the AFA.
Hail the AFA.
So you got fans.
No, they're wonderful. Ben and Desiree are wonderful people.
Nick would like to know if you could talk a little bit about.
Oh, directed at you, not her.
It was directed at me?
It says speaking as a man.
Well, I'm trying to read through it, and it's this like massive paragraph that some of it is not.
Yeah, I typoed a few times.
All right, I see it. All right. So, with me, and you can chime in on this. Perhaps, maybe that's part of the theme of the question. Speaking as a man, who some of these online kids want to spout as being on and on about being in charge and leading, what are your thoughts on women in the role specifically as leaders in the AFA and more specifically as spiritual leaders as Gyðja? All right. So I was having a conversation with a guy on Twitter yesterday about this. And our people come from where we come from, and that's different for everybody. Everybody comes here a different route. A lot of young men come to Asatru from a very isolated and a very, and it is what it is, but I don't mean this mean-spiritedly. We have a lot of very smart, very intellectual young men who lack experience and real life wisdom. And, this guy had a lot of concerns about women's roles and feminism and, how he thinks women are better suited in support roles and in mothering and at the home roles as opposed to leadership in organizations and various things. And I was sympathetic and expressed, hey, if you give me a call, I'd be happy to talk to you about any of this. Here's my phone number. And he was like shocked and affronted that I would suggest that he call me because instead he's using his fake Twitter name. And that told me a lot about where the question comes from. And again, yes, I do find that absurd. I'm going to be honest, but I think it's also honest. I think there's a lot of people that not just Asatru, but their life in general is played out in the realm of theory and online in endless masturbatory, circular conversations about their theories on things that don't really have a lot of practice involved in them. And, I would agree, if I'm building a video game, everybody would be this archetypical example of what my conception of the perfect, role for each of these people is. And, you can ask people that have known me coming up or whatever else. My default setting is not, let's stack the deck with women in leadership positions. I often think women in leadership positions in the world are absolutely terrible and abhorrent. And I do think that women absolutely do tend to do very well in domestic roles and in supportive roles. But reality matters, and theory is just that. It's a place to start, but you have to make decisions based on the realities that face you. And quite honestly, one thing that our women tend to have often more than our men in the day and age that we live in is courage and conviction and loyalty. We have a lot of women within the AFA that have stepped up in a way that is exceptional and have demonstrated consistent and sober judgment when a lot of our men haven't. And that's not a statement about masculinity or femininity. It's just a statement of the facts on the ground. And so we have to run things accordingly. What I think is also misunderstood, and often misunderstood by people who don't have the same seasoning of years doing things in the world, there is a very different way that women utilize and wield power than men do. And I think we've all seen that when a woman tries to express leadership in a masculine way, it's like nails on a chalkboard a lot of the time. It's screechy, like it's I use it as the most obvious example, not to be overly political, but it's like Hillary Clinton stuff. She's extremely unlikable. But I've seen that work very much the other way, especially amongst our Gyðja, and you can see some of it in expressed in The Lady with the Mead Cup. Mm-hmm. There are ways of controlling the flow of emotion, controlling the flow of how men interact with one another, that I think only women can do in the way that they can do it. Their ability to manipulate social structure is very unique. When men are contentious and scared of losing face, so they're locked in stupid fights or fights that are just not productive, women are very often able to very simply and very eloquently diffuse the situation in a way that men couldn't do without sacrificing one or both of their faith or their honor and their, perceived dignity. Mm-hmm. That's expressed in a much quieter, much more graceful way than male leadership, but it's always had its place amongst our folk. And I think that while that's not the social norm, isn't that women need to run things all the time. When we find spots to where women do, when we find queens, when we find Gyðja of the past, when we find, the motif, the archetype of the wise woman that people seek out for counsel, that's based on a very real thing amongst our folk. Tacitus writes about how women have a particular connection to divinity in a way that's very different and distinct from a man's, that leaders in our ancestors' day and in our day-to-day find special guidance in. And that's always been kind of the case. That's why in the day we'd have, spow wives or seeth kona that would go and be able to prophesy, be able to advise kings and chiefs and leaders. We had, the Edda themselves. It means grandmother. There, it's the wisdom of your grandmothers. The motherly education of that nurturing hand to lead and to groom and to guide power and to help shape relationships between powerful men is very, very useful. And so I don't think that's, a natural role that I want to push women into. When we find women that excel in that way, I think it's really important. And I think that, especially when we talk about leadership in a religious sense, within the AFA, one of the probably the function that our Gothar as a whole perform more than anything else, like on a, depending upon the Gothi or Gythia, but on, sometimes a daily, if not a weekly basis, is counseling. And I think that there are strengths and weaknesses. What we find often is and a lot of people have misconceptions about this too. I think from the outside looking in, one would assume that maybe men would do better if they are counseled by a man and women would do better if they're counseled by a woman. But that's not always the case. Different groups of people, and depending upon what they need counsel on, very often a Gythia is able to provide counsel in a much more effective way, or certainly in a different way than a man is. And depending on who is in need of counseling and what they need counseling on, that's oftentimes much more effective. So it really, really depends. I think that if people would, and so we all start where we start. As I was saying, I was probably sympathetic to that point of view before I got involved in the Asatru Folk Assembly and, saw the situation on the ground and the tools that we had to work with. And I do very much believe in patriarchal authority. I very much believe that the man needs to take charge in the household of the spiritual development and well-being of his family. And, ideally, I'd like to see men step up and take leadership positions in the church, but very often we have women that are doing that much better and much more effectively, and we're not going to forego that due to a concept or an idea or an ideal situation that's not the one we're facing. But I was going to say, we all start where we start, and I don't fault anybody for having, questions or concerns, but I would urge the people who have questions and concerns based on theory or idea, trust that we're doing something right. What I think is lacking a lot in Asatru is, so this is more complex, I guess. A lot of people come to our faith not from an overtly religious background. A lot of people come to our faith from a atheistic or at least an agnostic background where they might be vaguely spiritual, but not really part of a structure or an organized system of religion. And so I think some of it doesn't come as naturally to some as it does to others. With Asatru, I think people approach it as a organization, as a club, when I say hobby, I don't mean to trivialize it, because I think some people who take it very seriously have yet to develop that true religious mindset. But I'd like folks who have those questions to first consider, what if the gods genuinely support the Asatru Folk Assembly and give us their blessing? And if you allow for that, have a little bit of faith and trust that maybe we're doing some stuff right. I don't want that as a carte blanche, we can do whatever we want, or any kind of ulterior Gothic infallibility. Far from it, but maybe a kind of an assumption that maybe we got some stuff right, and see and check it out. Because some of us who've had to deal with the things that maybe you're concerned about, maybe we've been through some of this before. Maybe we've learned lessons. Maybe we know a little bit about what we're doing, and you should check it out and give it a chance. I think it is much easier for people to see something that they doesn't meet what they've decided in their head is perfect, and therefore it's easy for them to dismiss it. I think it's much harder to give something a shot and to take, a leap of faith, as it were, and come check it out and try to be part of it, try to pray on it and see if it works out, see if it rings true. And I think, I wish more people would give that a shot or adjust their mind in that way. And I think we'd have some better results in a lot of our lives. Lauren, what do you respond to any of either those concerns or any of the things that I mentioned about them? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated topic, isn't it? I mean, I just have to say, around the time that I first started going to gatherings with the AFA, I was like kind of going to gatherings of whomever I could find. I believe that I started going to some gatherings of a group in Berkeley. Probably a lot of people know about that one. Perhaps a more universalist type of strain of our faith, which is fine, but it's not what we practice. And I didn't stay with that one, with that strain. I stayed with the AFA. Because I felt like that I felt at home with the AFA. And I mean, even though it's hard to describe these kind of things, I know we're not a political organization, but perhaps the other group, the Truth in Berkeley, were a little bit more liberal, and I had grown up in a little bit more liberal family. So perhaps someone would expect me to go with the Truth instead of the AFA. But I am with the AFA, and I always have been. And that's just something with me. Even though people say things that aren't true about the AFA, my heart has always been with the AFA. And I can, answer any questions anyone has about that. It's been hard because part of being in something like the AFA is realizing that some things people say in the media aren't true, and if you grow up in perhaps a liberal family, you kind of think of yourself as, well, you're part of something that's on the right side of things. The media doesn't lie to me or whatever, but they do. So I hope that makes sense to people.
So Tracy is asking a question for all of us, or all of us are dying to know. Girl, what is your skincare routine? You're glowing.
Oh, goodness.
I'm assuming this is directed to you, Lauren.
Oh, and maybe it's directed at you, Matt. Maybe our glowing skin Al-Sharagothi.
Glowing, it's probably the vino.
Oh, wow. Well, I don't know. One of the kind of fun fact about me, I used to work at the Clinique skin and makeup counter at the makeup counter at the mall. So those ladies in the lab coats that you'd see, I was one of those ladies for a little while, the Clinique. But I do enjoy skincare, so perhaps that is part of it. I appreciate your words. Thank you so much.
Do you have any product that you would recommend to ladies that would like to have a similar glow?
Oh, I would just say just find any kind of whatever is in your budget, any kind of like gentle skin cleanser, even if it's like Vanicream or like any kind of like a lot of great things in the drugstore. Just like a non-soap kind of gentle cleanser and gentle moisturizer. And that makes a lot of difference, just cleanser and moisturizer. And it's a great self-care thing too. It's not just like the aesthetics of it, it's just how it makes you feel. And it makes you feel a lot better about your day if you can treat yourself to something like that. It doesn't have to be expensive at all. I always enjoy that.
Being pretty is a revolt against the modern world.
Oh, goodness.
That's the thing. Aesthetics matter. You do look great tonight, Lauren.
Thank you.
Question from the stream that Jake built. Gyðja Lauren, what cat is best and why is it the calico?
Oh, Jake. We love our cats, so we're nose and soft. I don't have a calico cat, but I do have, my husband and I have two cats that we love very, very much. We have two kind of Siamese mixed cats. We have one that's like whose name is Pumpkin, and he's a Siamese mix with like a flame point kind of thing. So he's kind of like a toasted marshmallow kind of cat. Oh, and my husband might bring over Runa. Runa is a little like she's kind of got a little bit of a calico in her, but we adopted them from the county shelter. But they are so sweet. We're big cat people. This is Runa. I always have such joy watching Jake's cats on the membership meetings. we love our cats and nose off. Oh,
All right, cool. I appreciate
calicos are amazing though. Calicos are so sweet. We love your little cats too, Jake. The little calico.
I have never owned one, but I would like to experience a smushed face cat. Although I think they have leaky eyes. I don't like that.
Oh, yeah.
Smush face. I like smush face things. English Bulldog was my favorite dog I ever had. It was amazing. Or a Sphinx cat. They look really interesting. They don't get dander everywhere. They're too expensive. If anybody would like to donate a Sphinx cat or multiple Sphinx cats, you're welcome to, and they will go to a good home.
Just any pet that loves you is amazing. They are such gifts of the gods. They really are, whether it's a cat or a dog or a guinea pig, whatever. Whatever it is, they are all just I am a real animal lover. I have always been an animal lover and will always be.
A word about allergies. Like
right.
We're doing show and tell.
Oh, here's Pumpkins.
All right, this is one of our cats.
Oh, there he is.
Her government name is Annabelle. We've referred to her the past several years as a Babu, which got shortened to Babu because Aubrey could not manage Annabelle, so she freestyled. She's a very nice cat. She's probably the only of our cats that I can hold one-handed like this and would not be struggling. So I appreciate that. I was going to say, speaking of a reference to allergies. Now that we're talking about cats, I was very allergic to cats growing up, and up into my 30s. When I moved to Florida to be with Mandy, I was extremely allergic to cats, and she lived in a small home where she had 4 cats, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But I'm that guy, like, what you said about pets is true. I have my preferences of, kinds of dogs and cats and creatures that I like. But if it comes up to me and says hi, I'm going to pet it and snuggle it and inevitably get it all over my face and then sneeze and whatever. So my eyes would swell up, my nose would run, my whole face would just leak. It would look like I got in a boxing match to where I just couldn't see out of my eyes. And, that was up until the day I moved. Like the day before, I was at a Yule gathering at my friend's house, and he had 1 cat. And again, they took care of their place. It didn't, reek of cat dander and cat litter. This guy came up, I was petting him, and man, I was swole up terrible. But within about a week of being at Mandy's, I never had a cat allergy since then. So it's strange how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mentioned, side note, I take little random asides. I did that with these baby bears one time.
I love bears.
So I was out at Camp Norga. It could have been in 2012. But I walked out into the woods and I was entranced because these two baby bears came up and started sniffing my hand. And so this is Rolo.
Hey, Rolo.
He's very soft. He's a kitten. He was up. We had him on VNS before when we just got him, and he was in the palm of your hand. He's big now. But what I was going to say is, yeah, I let these bears sniff me, and I pet these bear cub, and it was, probably 20 seconds until the light bulb went off. Probably not by themselves. Mom's probably somewhere. And I very slowly and carefully retraced I never saw Mom.
You're lucky.
Climbing a tree, but probably very close to losing my life that day. But that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. I almost wanted to be a veterinarian, but I'm actually I'm so much of an animal lover that I thought that I might not. I mean, frankly, I thought I might not be able to deal with it if I was taking care of a sick animal. That it might get in the way of my caretaking of the animal.
You'd have to put down a lot of animals as a veterinarian then.
Yeah. So
Tracy suggests this is a serious question. We'll take her at her word. Ranch versus blue cheese versus honey mustard, and you can only keep.
This is a big debate in our chat circles. Okay, so my favorite dressing is actually ranch. I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but I am a ranch girl. I do love ranch. I love blue cheese and Caesar and everything else as well, but ranch will always be my favorites. I know Sierra will be happy about that.
It's not a fair question. There is many a different application for each of those three dressings.
Right.
If it's
what are you putting it on? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say if it's salad that we're using this salad dressing for.
It's hard.
So it's not fair because ranch is so readily available. Blue cheese is available. I'm going to go blue cheese just because I don't get it as often. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it's better. I just don't get it as much. Right. On wings, blue cheese all the time.
Yeah, that's actually really good. Blue cheese on wings.
On a sandwich or other stuff, honey mustard sometimes, but I like ranch on a sandwich.
Honey mustard is pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think there's bad choices there. Although I'll say this about blue cheese. I need a funky blue cheese. Mm-hmm. I was talking to you earlier before the show about wines. I don't get a subtle hint of something.
Right.
It's
something special.
It's got to be significantly. It's got to be well aged and extremely funky for me to appreciate the blue cheese.
Yeah.
Side note, my daughter likes the funky cheese.
Oh, does she?
I'm not a feta guy. She likes feta and really funky blue cheese. She likes the sharpest of sharp cheddar cheese.
Has she always liked that, or just them recently? Always, yeah.
I mean, since she's had the opportunity, she's liked feta for forever. She's liked, the sharp cheddar over the mild cheddar. Since she was a baby, and as soon as we let her try some blue cheese, not thinking she'd care for it. She loved it. So
it's something we're born with. It's definitely something we're born with. And I mean, there's something to be said, obviously, for other things that are, genetically inherited. Like a lot of tastes whether it's culinary or religious, are definitely inherited.
So Tyler in Virginia donated $10 to the New York's Off Fund. Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate that. And Ronald Blake, haven't seen you in a while. It's great to have you back on the show. Bought us 5 coffees and says, "Hail all." Well, hail to you, Ronald. It's great to see you back, and we appreciate the 5 coffees. It's a $25 donation. Thank you so much. Tyler says, "Matt, you talked about men taking leadership in their families. My wife is very supportive of my beliefs, but is very agnostic. We both fell out of Christianity at the same time. I found Asatru, but she's very agnostic. What advice can you give as far as bringing her into my beliefs?" So I'm gonna swing at this because my question, but I'd like your follow up on it, Lauren. Now, with any of these questions, the specifics. Everybody is not a cookie cutter, so I've got to move on generalities. What I would say, there is a nuance and an art to taking leadership. I think demanding that she participate in Asatru and making it a negative and contentious experience is probably not your pathway to success. And even if it is functionally, I don't think that's the best way for her to build a meaningful and positive relationship with our gods. I noticed that you said she's agnostic and not atheistic, which I think is a really important distinction, especially mentioning that you guys come from a Christian background. If she has the capacity to entertain belief in something higher than herself, I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And I also don't think that our gods demand a blanket deep devotion to them coming out of the world that we live in. I don't think that's the scenario at all. I think they would like that to develop, but I have no reason to believe that they demand some kind of sight unseen faith in the same way that perhaps, the Abrahamic religions would demand that. That's never been a real belief of our folk is that, especially we're living in an interesting time. In the days of our ancestors, there wasn't a conversion process. You were, of the Cherusci tribe, of course you were Asatru. You were Norwegian, of course you were Asatru. That was just who you were, and it was integrated. We're coming from a different place now. So I think the expectation that for her to just blindly devote herself to the gods that's a big ask and usually not a very realistic one. What I think is really important is that she's provided with opportunities and encouragement to develop those relationships. And if she's open to it, that she is invited and encouraged and kind of nudged to come along and attend different things with you at whatever level of participation she wants to have. It's not uncommon for people, if they bring family members or somebody's, attending something for the first time or, the first few times or however long, if there's somebody's family, to observe and check it out, to participate in the socialization of, meeting other Asatru and talking and, playing with people's kids and having a good time. And then when there's religious, when there's ritual done, to participate as much or as little as she's comfortable with. But the first thing I'd say, and this is not just to you, Tyler, it's anybody listening that has a similar question. First, establish that this isn't some spooky secret thing you do by yourself. This is something that she's welcome to be a part of. Secondly, I would say, get her to a place where this is not scary to her. And this may or may not be scary to other people, but if one of the concerns is that it is uncomfortable, or there's a fear of the unknown, or even a bad interaction with some know-it-all online that's, socially toxic, getting her to see that it's nice people in the daylight doing something nice and positive and not scary is a big part of it too. And not being afraid to express your faith in a way that's not, I guess, weaponized to try to force her into something, but letting that be known, associating good changes and good growth in your life to your Asatru practice, and expressing that in a way to where she associates your Asatru practice with positive things. I think that goes a long way. I don't think there's any perfect solution to make it happen for sure, but it's one of the things as a Gothi that I think relates. There are parts to be played by everybody involved. When we do a ritual and I go out to perform bloat, I tell people beforehand, usually, that I want them to go into the ritual space with an open mind and an open heart. I think in order for something transcendent to happen, the assembled folk need to be honest, and they need to, at the very least, be open to experiencing something spiritual, and not give the impression of being worshipful if they don't have a sincere belief, but have a real, like, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, I hope this is a thing. Going in there with a good faith openness is very important. Having an effective or a, worthwhile Gothi or Gythia is also important. But there's, a third element that's really important as well, is the gods facilitating that. So all those three things certainly the gods and the participant have to work. And the Gothi or Gythia can help facilitate that. They can help draw the attention and the goodwill of the god that you're approaching. They can help facilitate the person in the ritual to open themselves and to fully engage in the process. But that gift cycle has to happen between the folk and the gods, and it requires both parties, and it doesn't happen every time with every ritual for everybody. But it does happen, and it happens with increasing frequently as you grow in your faith. Providing her opportunities for those things to happen, because they don't typically just randomly happen when you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix. They happen when you're out engaging in the process, and when you're open and you're in a space where that's possible to happen. So getting her to be open to the possibility, and the more you can get her involved in processes where she's not, where it's honest, where there's no expectation that she's pretending to be something she's not, because you can't fool the gods, you can't trick them. And then doing what you can to facilitate, at the very least, those things not being scary, and at the most, where she opens herself to the possibility of religious experience, and then, see what happens. Some of it, you have to trust and have some faith in the gods as well to help, provide that from their end as well. But I think you doing the best you can on your end and then asking for a little bit of help from them too helps make that a reality. The other kind of side note, as far as conceptually being open to it, Oftentimes, if people don't initially have a sincere faith in the gods, one of the things that is easier to get them to be open to is the ancestors. One of the things, even Christians or people who don't consider themselves religious or whatever else, in moments of quiet in their life, they will talk to the dead. They may not go through a big deal of lighting a candle and going before their altar, but they'll, talk to their parents or their grandparents. They'll reach out. They'll look at a picture on their wall of one of their loved ones that's passed, and they'll talk to them. And they may not think much of it, but it's nothing could be more natural to the human condition than to reach out to your ancestors. I think fundamentally it's very built into us to understand that as real. And I think that's a good place to start intellectually with getting people to accept, things beyond the veil, and you can build from there. That's kind of my thoughts on it. Lauren, do you have any follow-up to that?
Definitely. I mean, I think one of the big things for everyone is the ancestors. I think I really believe that everyone at their core, like, hungers for their ancestor worship, to talk to their ancestors, to just give praise to their ancestors, to be grateful to their ancestors for everything that they've done for them. I think I remember I was very influenced by the books that I read growing up when I was really, really young. I'm not sure if anyone else has read these, but there were these books by this author named Lynn V. Andrews, called like Medicine Woman and Jaguar Woman. It's like this is a European descended woman, but she talked about being mentored by these Native American shamans. This was like in the 80s that she wrote these books, and I read these books in the 80s when I was growing up. I was reading it like, this is kind of the woes of a gifted kid kind of situation. But when I was like in fifth grade, I was reading it. When I was kindergarten, I was reading at 5th grade level. So I was reading these books about this white woman who was practicing this indigenous American religion. And I found something in it. I think that women hunger for this. We have from this young age. It's in our metagenetics that I strongly believe in. We're born with this desire to have this ancestor worship, but in modern society, it's not provided for us. So we have to find it. So this is what we provide for people, and you can provide that for your wife. And I believe that she with time and patience, if she sees results, if you do some bloat and perhaps some little rituals for her that where she sees little results happening, when she can share her feelings about them with you, and I'm sure that she'll find something out of them, because seriously, we all really hunger for these things. It's just that modern society doesn't give it to us, no matter what political spectrum part of the spectrum we're on. So I believe that our faith gives that to us, and it's just really powerful. And I'm so grateful for the AFA, for what it does for people and for women. I hope that answers some of those questions.
Oh, what's next on here? So, Owl of Omens, what do you feel gives the AFA a theological precedency over other groups? Lauren, do you want to take the first swing at that?
Well, I suppose I can answer from someone who's looked into other groups. That probably is valuable. I did look into other groups after I moved over from when I was about 12, perhaps, and I decided that I was more, Wiccan or whatever. But it was, looking back, it was really more kind of Vanek worship. But that's kind of another story. But college level, when I kind of looked into things, and then after that, it was kind of like, what's around? Well, there was like the AFA, and there was like the Troth out in Northern California. So both of those things are there for me. So I went to go to meetings for both of those things. And I was welcome to see, kind of you know, um, what was in sync for me. And I remember feeling much more at home with AFA gatherings, because I suppose I had always been folkish. I suppose you could call it. Even when I was Wiccan, I was very connected with our gods and goddesses, with our European gods and goddesses. So, and I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with it, too. That's another thing. These days, some of these groups that you might come across might tell you that there's something wrong with your heritage, or with something, something like that. But there's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with your heritage, with your gods, with your goddesses. There's nothing wrong with what your ancestors did. Yet we're told that time and time again. And the AFA, it's really a place where you can be yourself. You can be with other people of your folk. You could be proud of who your ancestors are. You can be proud of who your gods and goddesses are. And you can worship them, and you can be very, very happy. There's nothing wrong with that. I hope that makes sense.
It does. So there's a couple of different questions here, and I think that when we ask questions in those terms, and when we evaluate theological precedency, I think it gets us on a debate about concepts and about a level of intellectual detail that I think misses the point. So first, and I'm going to answer the meat of the question, but first, like, what makes the AFA better? Lots of stuff. I think the scope of the AFA, the sheer quantity of in-person, real-life doing Asatru events that you can see on our calendar at runestone.org. Nick can throw up the thing where you can go directly to our calendar and just take a look. But, every week we have lots of people gathering in the real world to worship our gods and to have fellowship with one another. I think if you see that, we've got 4 Hoffs, we are working on the 5th and the 6th simultaneously. We have a lot of plans for the future. We plan for and accomplish the future. I think that if you look at our consistency, I think if you look at our family embracingness, I think that if you look at a lot of things that way, I think that seeing that we are, we have 30 years in the books now as the Asatru Folk Assembly, We're built on the theological journey and foundations of Odin's relationship with our founder, Steve McNallen, back in 1968, and all of the efforts and things that he put forward. I think that is a testament to our, well, I think all of those things are testaments to why we're better. But I think that beyond that, that's not really you can be better organized or more numerous and still be wrong. What I think speaks more to the theological precedence and correctness is that all the other things that I mentioned, besides just speaking to practical efficacy, they also speak to active, consistent, faithful participation in the gift cycle. Our relationship with the ICER is built around the gift cycle. It's built around our actual real life frequent exchange of worship with our gods, and us giving them our worship, them giving us their blessings, and that being renewed all of the time, year after year, for as long as it has. I think when we talk about the successes of the AFA, that also speaks not just to, we're well organized or we're efficient, but it also speaks to, no, we're blessed. As people of faith, we believe that our success is due to the approval and the blessings of the ICER. And that doesn't mean that everything, I would never put it on our gods that they, think everything we do is the greatest thing or everything I say is the greatest thing. But I do believe that they believe that in generally we are moving the right way, we're doing the right things, and that they're pleased with the things we're doing. That's confirmed time and again through ritual and through things. And I realize everyone may make those claims, but I do think that 30 years and 4 Hoffs and a continued and a steady progression of things does say a lot. I think when you look at other groups, as you say, you don't have that time of being successful. Sometimes you have some of the older groups that have a storied past and don't have any further interaction other than online conversations or Zoom meetings.
Right.
And you see a lot of groups within modern Asatru, and I don't just mean recently, but since the beginning, since probably the 80s is when you start seeing, rival groups going on, but you don't see others with the longevity of the Asatru Folk Assembly. You don't see others that are able to stand the test of time and really build their church, their clergy, their theology in a consistent and time-honored way. You have people that go in and out. You have personalities and groups that, wax and wane, often in very, very short bursts. I think the longevity of the AFA really speaks to that. I think that the seriousness and the piety that our Gothar and many of our leaders put into this is a testament to that. And I think all of those things get there. I think that our theology is superior. I think that the Asatru Trulagmal that I spent a lot of time putting together presents our faith in the best way that I've seen presented. And I stand by that, and I'd be happy to, address any specific points of that. But I think more than that, and I've had people from different groups and different organizations that attest to this, when we stand in ritual to our gods, our gods are there and they bless us. And it's something that I've heard time and again that means a lot to me. First, our members, when they are part of the AFA, very, very often describe that it's like coming home, that this is the best thing they've done with their lives, and that this is very meaningful. We get those testimonials daily. But when people participate with us at our hofs or where we do ritual, consistently the feedback is that's the first time they've done rituals and the gods were there and the gods responded. I've had people from different organizations that really like what they do or really like what other groups do, but attest that in an AFA ritual, like specifically, one of the ones that I often hear is that Odin, like, no, he appreciated that ritual. He was there. He participated. And when asked if that's, not what happens at their rituals, the answer is typically no, that's not the experience. And, again, I assume that other people, if you ask that question, they'll probably tell you something different. I can't say that doesn't happen there. I don't know that. Knowing some of those groups, I think quite a bit of them, that doesn't happen. But I'm not going to suggest that can't happen other places, but I know that it does happen here. I know that it happens here. And I know that the blessings of our gods are manifest in our lives and the lives of the life of the Asatru Folk Assembly consistently and significantly. As long as I've been a part of it, I know that firsthand. And I think that our success, our longevity, and who we are speaks for itself the more you look into it. And I think that something else that is real, look at what we do. You can see regularly on, and again, it may sound cheap, but it's real. It's the world we live in. You can see on our website and social media all the time the things that we're doing, and that we're not just about idea or concept or thought, but we're about practice, and that we practice regularly, frequently, and widespread. And that's real. I don't see that from other groups. I don't see that frequency or that real life practice about it. And there's lots of scholarship out there, but scholarship on a subject doesn't equal participation in that subject. There's, millions of fat dudes in their armchair talking about football. They might be super fans of football, but they're not football players. There's any number of people out there that are, experts on the intricacies of Star Trek, but they're not, manning 24th century starships. That's not what they're doing. They know, just because you know a lot about a subject doesn't mean that you are participating in that subject. Our real life participation, I think, is what speaks the most to the theological precedency that we have over other organizations and other groups. Oh, and another thing that I just want to mention on that's really important. In the AFA, more than any other group that I'm aware of, we focus on the reality that we live in today and our future. We don't conceive of Asatru as being locked in the past. And the be all and end all, the focus of our theology is not on how our ancestors practiced Asatru. It's certainly informed by that, but our focus is on how we are currently practicing Asatru and how we want to set up our children and our grandchildren to practice Asatru in the future forever and ever. And I think that timelessness of the AFA also speaks to our theological relevance and precedency. Sorry, trying to keep up with a couple of things over in the chat. Our next question did anyone catch the interview between Mark Purrier and Red Ice today? Have they reached out to the AFA for an interview before? So, yes, I did an interview with them years ago. Steve McNallen has done, I think, 2 or more interviews with them. We've actually had Henrik and Lana out to a few AFA events over the years. But yeah, I'm unaware that Mark Purrier had an interview there today. I didn't catch that. Lauren, were you aware of that, or did you catch that?
I wasn't aware of that. I look forward to hearing that, though.
So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to ask them about literally anything you want. In the meantime, Lauren, is there anything you would like our audience to know? Is there anything that you want an opportunity to speak on or to tell folks about, or any message that you think our audience needs to get from you?
Something I saw in our spiritual excellence chat the other day was just concerns about the AFA, and about, as a woman, she was concerned about, things with, things people say about us, basically. And I would just, if anyone who's considering joining the EFA, or anyone who's already a part of the EFA, who has any concerns about anything that you've heard or anything, just reach out to me and I'll talk to you about that, because I worked through that myself. The AFA is not what people say that we are. And I'm just so grateful that that the AFA exists, and we are so blessed by the gods for what we have. And if you ever want to talk to me, please reach out to me, Anderson@runestone.org. I'm always there to talk to you about anything you ever want to talk to about. And thank you so much. I love you all. Thank you.
Yeah, I want, everybody to know that certainly on the program, you can always ask questions and send them to vns@runestone.org, and we'll answer them live on here. But also, if any of you personally have questions, any of our Gothar would be very, very happy to answer anything you have, including myself. Whether you're a member or not, if you have questions and there's stuff that you would like our advice, our thoughts, our counsel on, or just to clarify something, please always feel free to reach out. There's contact information on our website. Any of those things can get to us. Messages to any of our folk builders can get to us, and we'd be really happy to answer anything. I know that this is a good place to get things answered publicly, but if you have something that's more private, or you're less comfortable asking here, that's fine. But we would encourage you to reach out. Questions are always welcome, and not only are they welcome, but they're appreciated. So I've seen another question on, I see it's something kind of going on in the chat. Don Barnes says that when I told folks, if you're practicing Asatru and you're not with us, why not? That was what caused him to join. And I think it's a valid question now as much as ever. If you're listening to this, and a couple of things. If you're listening to this, thank you. We're glad you're here. Anybody is welcome to listen to this and participate in the chat room and ask questions. whoever you are, if you find this entertaining, if you find it educational, if you find it spiritually enlightening, awesome. We're glad that you're here. I'd also like everybody, if you enjoy it, like, share, subscribe anywhere you find this as a podcast or as a video. Like, share, subscribe, tell folks about it, send folks our way. Because, yeah, that word of mouth is really important. But also, if you're out there and you agree with us and you're a heterosexual white person, you should be in the AFA. And if you're not, you should ask yourself why. Perhaps you have a reason. I'm not sure what that is, but without a good reason, we'd love for you to come and be part of what we're doing. We're doing amazing things. We can do them better and faster and with added energy, the more of you who would like to join and be a part of it. And I genuinely think it would be wonderful for you and your families to be part of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Believe that with all my heart. I'm sure Lauren does as well. That's why we're here. That's why our families are here. That's why we do what we do. So I would encourage everyone, there's always some perfect time, man, when I have a better job, man, when I'm in a more stable spot, man, when I'm not working so much. There's a million different reasons, and we all do that. That's not throwing shade at anybody. We all do that.
Yeah.
There is no perfect time. The perfect time to join the AFA is 30 years ago. The next most perfect time is today.
We all are where we are, and this is the perfect time to join. And if you have any, hang-ups or anything, you have questions, just let us know, because we've come into those questions. Just let us know. We can let you know. We are on the side of the winners. I can let you know. We are. I've looked at other groups. We are the winners compared to other groups. Oof.
You're not lying. So I would also, I see somebody talking in the chat room about if anybody's had any experience with the quote unquote Odin Brotherhood.
Oh, yeah.
No, I've heard about that. I've only heard about that from that one book. I haven't heard about a lot of deeds and existence in the real world. I know there are claims made in the book that there's some kind of an unbroken line of spiritual descent from the, our heathen period to today. I am suspicious of that. But without giving it a deeper examination, I'm not going to, speak negatively about it. But no, I'm not familiar with them as far as their existence in the world and stuff that they've done recently, other than that book. There's a number of other groups with very similar names. There's, a bunch of different Odinist fellowship variations over the years. So I'm not sure if we're talking about the same group, but the Odin Brotherhood I'm familiar with is based around, I want to say a book from the early 90s talking about that. Where else? I'm just checking some things over in the chat here.
Yeah, we can test the, if you look at the results, that's the thing, the results from what everyone is doing, and the results from the AFA is objectively superior. It's superior. It's absolutely superior. It doesn't matter what your political view is or anything. You can be whatever, liberal or progressive or anything, but the AFA is doing so much for our folk, and we are absolutely communicating with the gods, and we are giving gifts with the gods, and they are giving gifts back to us, and we are having such an amazing time, and we really wish that you would join us. Even if you're on the left, just join us. It's okay. It's not true what they say about us. It's
First,
not.
it is okay, and I think that's an interesting political point.
Yeah.
It's funny how things have developed over the last 10 years, and some of our younger audience may not internalize this in quite the same way. People who were quote unquote on the left in the 1990s would be considered right-wing extremists by the woke crowd these days.
Mm-hmm.
The left has moved so incomprehensibly far to the left that it's really caused we've seen that a lot. People, the words that they use as pejoratives towards the right lose a lot of their efficacy because really middle of the road folks or people that are classically liberal are now, told they're Nazis and they're racist and they're evil and they're hate mongers and they're anything else for believing that, boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. That makes you a horrible bigot now in certain circles, believing that race exists. If you say that and you're a white person, that's horrible hate speech. It's gotten silly. So, you don't have to, there's not a political litmus test to your joining the Asatru Folk Assembly. There's a question of values and core values. And if your values align with ours, you should be here. And a couple of things on this, and I think it follows up to the next question here in a second. One of the things that has drastically reduced the momentum and the potential within Asatru over our modern existence is this toxic trait amongst our folk to always want to start something fresh and think they can do it better. We've seen this, those of us who've done this for a while have seen it tens of times since Steve McNallen came home to Asatru in 1968. It's been, probably hundreds of times, certainly dozens of times that are noteworthy enough to, anybody know the name of it. But everyone thinks that, no, I can do it better. Let's start tomorrow this new thing. As a result, every time that happens, everyone is starting from year one. And when every new year is year one, we never make any progress. You never get anywhere. We spend all our time, I've mentioned this before, but it's funny. My cousin and I, we would play bass. That's what we used to call it pejoratively, because as kids, we'd get all our action figures and we'd set up this elaborate base because we're going to have this big war between all our action figures. But we spent so much time setting it up that we never actually played. And this would happen over and over again. And some of these people, you spend so much time trying to launch some new fledgling thing instead of taking an active participation in what exists, what is evident that the gods have blessed. Get on the team, and if there's ways to make it better, let's make it better together. If there's ways, you think you've got this great idea, well, get on the team and let's talk about it. Let's work together and let's, none of us, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions. In the AFA, we're not married to a lot of really, whatever ideas on how we want to do things. What we are devoted to is pleasing the gods and building the Asatru Folk Assembly in the way that is healthy, effective, and that pleases the Aesir. If you have an idea of a way to do that better, cool, we want to hear it. If you want to participate in building and shaping Asatru, get on the team. This is where you can do that. What we do see is when everybody's doing their own thing, all these different little offshoot attempts don't go anywhere. They don't accomplish but they do siphon off energy of people that could be here helping us all to move forward.
Yeah.
But instead, they're dispersed over all of these pathways that are ineffective. But when they're here, we're seeing growth and development and accomplishment and blessings and beautiful things. And again, I know that sitting where I sit, of course he's going to say that, but I say it because it's true. And I'm here because it's true. I didn't come into the world as the Alzherigothi. I was just a 20-year-old, I want to say kid, but I guess I was a young man at that point, a 20-year-old.
I remember you at that point.
Well,
I remember you.
You knew me then.
Yeah. You were an extremely intelligent. I just remember you. I remember seeing you at gatherings, like at a and you had an extremely just amazing inner composure. You were very composed, and I could tell that you had a lot to say, but you weren't necessarily saying it, but you were very intelligent, and I knew that you had a wonderful future in front of you. And it's just joy to see what you have done since then. This is since 2010 or something, when I saw you at
Thank you for
I just remember seeing you at things, and I was just I know that he has an amazing future in front of him. And it's such a joy to see you from then to now.
Well, that's one of the things I don't think people realize. Nobody wants to hold you down. If you want to be part of making Asatru move forward, of building our faith, of building Asatru, get on the team. Yeah. I was just, like I said, I was just a young man who wanted to restore our folk to our trough to the Aesir and make this work. And I knew at the time, that's the thing. I didn't know everything then. Conceptually, there's a lot of stuff the AFA was, I think could have been different or could have been better. Shoot, there's tons of stuff now that could be better. There's a lot of things that could have been more perfect, but the AFA was what was doing something. They were what was accomplishing. That's what was working. So I wanted to get on the team that was working and help them be better and help them, in the capacity, whatever capacity I was allowed to do. I wanted to help move the ball forward and be part of things.
And we saw where that went.
And what I found then, and what I am very committed to being true now, is nobody's holding anybody back. If you want to help carry the load, by all means, let's do that. Let's move forward. Let's move forward together. And over time, I became a folk builder and a Gothi, and eventually I wound up where I am now, and I'm very blessed to be here. But anybody who, it's a very natural thing to feel like a big fish in a small pond, and that's really appealing.
Yeah.
But nobody's stopping you from being a big fish in the big pond.
Yeah.
You don't start there necessarily, but you can get there, and nobody wants to hold anybody back. We want to lift each other up. So, I would encourage, seriously, every heterosexual white person, I want to join the AFA, and I want us all to move forward together. So what I see as the next question here that's, come up. I call myself an ancestral cultist, and I would join an AFA community if there was one where I live. Still waiting for one in Michigan to begin. Do you folks read any literature from Carolyn Emmerich, Marie Cachet, or Vard Vikernes? They're my complete foundation in my spiritual pathway. So a couple of things, because I want to go through this kind of in order a little bit. Michigan is a funny state because your state is like two different pieces that are two completely different states in a lot of ways. It depends where you are in Michigan, but we absolutely have people that get together every month in Michigan.
Yeah.
And we are building things in Michigan. So we would encourage you to do that first. Chris Savage is our folk builder in Michigan. He's a fantastic guy and a friend of mine, somebody I have a lot of respect for, and he's doing a great job in Michigan. So C Savage, SAVICH at runestone.org. He would really like to talk to you and help you get situated if that's something you want to do and be a part of. And this isn't, I want to address this, but again, please keep in mind the things that I say aren't always directed at the person asking the question. So you may have your reasons, whatever. I just want to say it's a very natural thing we all want to step into something that's already established and waiting to welcome us in. I think we all want that. But the process of how an AFA community develops is a very simple one. Simple doesn't mean easy, but it does mean simple. The roadmap is clear. It takes one person to join, to stick around somewhere, to actively participate. And then when somebody comes along and says, hey, I wish there was somebody else in Michigan. Well, hey, I know a guy. Here we go. Now we'll get the two of you guys together. And then we get three of you guys together, and then four, and then five, and it snowballs over time into a community. And when the community is large enough, we get HOFs closer and closer to you. And that's the path. And sometimes it's a long one. Sometimes it's a short one. Sometimes something catches fire and you get a bunch of people really quick. Sometimes it's a long path, but the only way that happens is by folks joining. Somebody's got to be that first guy. Somebody's got to be the second. Somebody's got to be the third until you reach a critical mass to where people want to be a part of it. And, but we do have things going on in Michigan. I don't know how close they are to you, but you should absolutely reach out. If you're close to the border of your state, depending on where you're at, we've got things happening in Wisconsin. We've got things happening in Indiana. We've got things, kind of on all sides of you as well, but we do have things in Michigan also. And I'd say this, I worked in the bar industry for a long time. And what we would see sometimes on a slow night, everybody look in like, oh, it's dead. And they'd keep walking. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else would look in like, man, it's slow. And they keep walking. Somebody else looks in a few minutes later, man, it's slow. And they keep going. If every one of those people just came inside and had a beer, all of a sudden people be like, oh, wow, there's 2 or 3 people in there having wow, there's 4 or 5 people having wow, there's 6 or 7. Next thing you know, it's night. That's how it happens, though, is people want to signing up and getting there. And you need that pioneering local to where you're at.
I hope those people know that the AFA is that's the people in the group is the AFA. Mm-hmm. Like that's the people. It doesn't matter like what left or right or anything. Even if you're on the left, like those people in the bar that you go in, you're wondering if they're, loyal to ACR. Those are AFA. Just go talk to them. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's that's okay.
The biggest.
It's okay.
I've said this before. Okay. The biggest step in Asatru is the step from your couch to the front door.
Right.
And that's for all of us. It's not just for you. That was the biggest step for me. When I first came home to Asatru, we had a motley assortment of people in Anchorage. Didn't know what I was getting into. They were having I believe they were celebrating Norna Knot. I believe that's what the celebration was. And they're in a park and they invited me. And I came out and I snuck around in the woods, peeking out from behind the trees to see who are these people? What's going on? What kind of strange, stuff am I getting into here? I think we all have that hesitation. The fear of the unknown is the
Yeah.
biggest thing, because literally you can't adjust to it. Anything that you put a name to and a parameter to, you can work yourself up, you can work up the courage, you can conceptualize, prepare yourself for. The unknown is always the scariest.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's worth it. It's
Yeah.
absolutely worth it.
And
So I'd
we
encourage
are the
everybody to do
ones
that.
who are doing something. We
Yeah.
are. Like our group is. The
And
AFA is doing things and other groups aren't doing things, and it's just the subjective truth. I'm sorry. It's just the way that it is.
so you asked another question there too, and I want to answer it honestly, but I'm not answering it spicily. Please don't take it that way. So yes, I'm familiar with Carolyn. I don't think I've read anything she's written. I've certainly talked to her. She used to be a member for a time. She's really big on theory and not on practice, unfortunately. Getting her to attend and to practice was always a step too far. It doesn't devalue stuff she writes about. I can't speak to that. I haven't read a lot of the things that she's written. I'm not familiar of the second author you mentioned. I am familiar with Varg, and I don't think particularly highly of Varg. I think his ideas are, I think a lot of his stuff is ego stroking. I think he's got to have some new take on everything. And I think there's a very, very unhealthy obsession with simplifying everything to placentas and the birth process. That's certainly extremely important. I think it's unnecessarily primitive and ooga booga to make everything just an analogy for that. I think he closes off a lot of paths to actual spiritual connection with the gods. And I think in a lot of ways, there's an atheism there that I don't think's relevant to what we do, and I don't even think is remotely similar. But everybody comes from a different spot. There's a lot of people here that their introduction was Varg, either through his YouTube, through his writings, or just through his, music in his band back in the day. There's a lot of people that was their entryway. So I'm not criticizing that at all. I'm just trying to respond to your question. Please don't take anything negative from that. I know it's like, man, here's my favorite authors, and then people trash them. That's not what I'm trying to do. What about you? Are you familiar with those three authors and their works?
I follow Varg on X, and I have a lot of respect for him. I mean, honestly, like I know that he has a lot of views that these days are a little bit more polarized than other days. But I feel like I enjoy seeing what he has to say about the holidays, about the days of remembrance and everything. I know that he's probably not a part of our group, but I do have a lot of respect for him, and I do follow him on X.
That makes one of us. No, and I say that Varg, and that challenges me to. It's very easy to just think of the negatives and not think of the positives. He lives life by his terms, and I think he's authentic to that. He's decided to make his own little separate space in the world.
I wish he wasn't so on the fence with things, but that's just me.
I think that's the thing. I think there's, since the beginning,
like he's really with us, but
there's this rebellion.
It is what it is.
There's like, there is an edgelord thing, and I think he very much is in the edgelord category.
Right.
One thing that we see a lot and we run into these days, especially in political spheres, but also religiously, is
Yeah.
people that just want to find something edgy. And it's funny because we live in a time where the axis of edgy has flipped.
Right.
So, up until, I don't know, up until the 2000s, certainly, if not up until later, the left was where edginess was. But you
Yeah.
find a lot of people that have a pattern in their life that they're, at different times they would have been beatniks, and then they would have been hippies, and then they would have been, goth or punk, and then they want to be the hot topic goth, and then they want to be whatever the edgy thing is. But we saw this shift where being quote unquote trad is edgy, and being, conservative is edgy. And I think that's why you find some of these same folks that would have been diametrically opposed when it was going on, finding, different fascist movements of the early 20th century to be, an edgy thing they can associate with. And then it's edgy to join, trad Catholics or the Orthodox Church. There's always this, there's a thing now to where being traditional is edgy. So we have a strange overlap of people.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same people that are edgy religiously in a super conservative way today were edgy in Satanism 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as soon as we win, if Asatru was the religion of all white people, then they would be edgy by being something else, by doing voodoo or doing some kind of other thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the substance, it's about being counterculture. And I just have seen too much of that with Varg to not think that plays a very significant role in what he does. And sometimes if you get the right point in how the spectrum moves, you'll hit to where somebody will be not your kind of folks, but happen to agree with you on core issues.
Yeah.
Like I ran into that, when I used to watch Fox News. John Hannity is not my guy. He's not my guy in so many ways. But because the left moved so far left, me and Sean Hannity ended up being on.
You're too smart for Hannity. You're too smart for Hannity.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I don't want to be associated with the guy, but we're standing on the, if we're picking sides and standing on like, hey Sean, it's a strange. So sometimes there are strange.
Yeah, I see it.
Is that you're forced, to be in the same category just because the other option is so absurd or because the currents that you're in are similar. And I think that's one of the things with Varg and Asatru that just kind of happened to coalesce at the same time. But that's a lot of talk. If you are interested, please reach out to Chris and just see and check it out. And if it's something that you want to do, awesome. If you find out it's not for you, maybe it will be down the road. But I think we've got really good things. If you're in the Upper Peninsula, I think it would be worth your time, even though it's a bit of a drive, to find yourself over at Baldershoff. If you're in whatever you guys call the rest of your state, down in southern end of Indiana, which is, again, a little bit of a haul for you, we have a really solid group of guys that have a building there that it would be good to get you guys interacting with. Also, out of curiosity, or you might find this curious or interesting, Freyshoff, which is the next Hoff we're going to get as soon as we pay off Njordshoff, is going to be in either Western Pennsylvania or Eastern Ohio. That might be relatively close to you, depending on where you are in your state. So that's something to think about also.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful.
Lauren,
subjectively, we are the only group that's doing anything. I just want to say, I know all the groups that are doing things, and I just want to say, like we are the only group that's doing anything. And if you have anything, any questions about that, just like let me know, and I will let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I hope that makes sense.
well, it's hard because
It is hard. Yeah.
of course we're going to say that. But the
Right.
difference is it's true. Like check out
Yeah.
any of our social media and it can be scoffed at, but if a 15-year-old girl has a particularly good hamburger, it's all over social media. We're in the day and
Yeah.
age where everyone, and I mean older people in their 60s and 70s, everybody's taking selfies and they're posting stuff of them doing things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that in these other places. I don't see
Yeah.
that in other groups. I
I've
do
looked.
see
I
that
know. I've
in the
seen.
AFA, and that's why it's so important for me that we post those things, is so others can see that there's people together doing stuff. Our gentleman who
Yeah.
asked about, well, man, I wish there was somebody in Michigan. I can show you
It's there.
pictures of members gathered in Michigan this month and last month and the month before and many previous months. And I think there's a value in that because it's real. You can reach out and touch it. That's a thing.
Yeah.
And if something doesn't ever leave the world of ideas, it doesn't count. It doesn't count unless it's real. Unless you act on it. The best. There is and I think we fundamentally know this. I'm sure that authors and thinkers have put this much more eloquently. But there is a tragedy to dreams and ideas that are never acted upon and never achieved. There's a guilt.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never thought of it, then it's not your fault. You just didn't have the idea. But if you had the idea and you knew you should do something and you wanted to do something and then you didn't, there's a guilt there. There's a remorse. There's a thought at the end of your days that you shoulda, coulda, woulda, and you didn't. And there's a lot of people that find themselves in that spot.
Yeah.
In the AFA, it's a common hail to, hail the doers. And it may sound campy or whatever, but we really mean that. Hail those that actually do things, that live the life that they talk about or that they think about in their head or they plan for. Those of you that are out there, those of us that are out there putting our faith into practice, that's where this is real. And the gods see that. The gods know that.
Yeah.
Our next thing is from Sierra. Lauren, have you read, or if you have, what are your opinions on The Lady with the Mead Cup?
You know what? That's one of those books where I have on my list of things that I wouldn't read. Because what? No, because one of those that's one of the books that we wanted to read in the books in AFA, and I hope that comes up again to be one of the ones that we read, because I would really like that to be one that we talk about together and discuss together. But I do have that in my collection. That is really important. I'm super excited about that book. I hope you're excited too. I feel like we're gonna read it the next couple months.
So everybody listening to this,
Yeah,
if you are a
I'm
woman,
really excited.
if you enjoy the company of women, if you have a daughter, if you have a spouse that you want to get more involved, if you have a mother that you want to get more involved, whatever the case might be, that's excuse me, that's the definitive work on women's practice in the ancestral expression of our faith. And it's very well done. There's a lot of really good things in there. It can be a challenging read and it tends to be repetitive, but it's very important and it is the authority on the subject. And I think it's definitely worth reading for folks. Man, doesn't seem like it's been that long ago. It's been, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 years since I read it. If one is undecided and a seeker, can you still visit and hang out at a Hof? Absolutely, you can. I mentioned earlier in the program, we've got 2 events coming up. Midsummer at Odenshof is coming up, which is a really good opportunity. I don't have the dates in front of me, and Nick didn't show me the graphic right now, so I'm blaming on him. But it's coming up in June, and then we have Sigurblot at Sigurdheim in Jackson County, Tennessee, coming up in July. Both those really good opportunities, but each of our Hofs has events monthly. So if you can get yourself, and those are on the calendar. I mentioned the calendar at runestone.org. That is comprehensive for all of the Hofs. Each Hof has its own district calendar you can look at as well, but the runestone.org calendar is comprehensive. The third weekend of every month, except for the big event weekends, are when the Hofs are celebrating things. If you can make it out, that is absolutely something you can do. Reach out to any of your folk builders. They can get you set up with, a time and welcome you in and show you around. You can also stop by and say hi. Each of our Hofs is findable on Google Maps, and you can type it in and a little blue line will take you there. That's another thing, and it's funny, and it's kind of a cheesy way to talk about like our legitimacy, but there's something really cool to type in our physical locations, and like that's the thing. You can just put it into Google Maps and it takes you there. It's kind of it is what it is. It's a neat step to have that. But yeah, wonderful. Any of you guys that are listening can absolutely check out our Hofs. And if the only way for you to make it there is at an off time where we're not doing something, but you still want to check it out, reach out to a folk builder and chances are we can arrange something for you.
Yeah.
Random question. What's steps to get my wife joined to the AFA? Does she have to pay a membership fee? Does the AFA accept star stickers? Because that's all she has available currently. I am not sure what a star sticker is.
Literally just stickers of stars.
What?
It's a joke. It's a joke, Matt.
Okay, I get it now. No, I didn't know if that was some kind of state food stamp program or something. So real talk on the question. Family membership things people ask about. This is kind of how it works. The AFA would like every adult member to be a member in their own right, to have their own, to express that they want to be a member. And yeah, if they want to join as individuals, and that's the way that the donation works, is the monthly membership fee, then yes. But what we'd like for people to do, and what we've been moving towards significantly over the past 10 years, is the Hoftoller. And the Hoftoller is based on, if it's personal, it's based on personal income. If it's family, it's based on household income. And that accommodates, families where maybe the wife doesn't work or whatever the situation is. It's just a percentage-based giving. It's, an honest 1% or more of monthly income. And that's how that works. And anybody can kind of set you up for it. Often that's something that's supported and doable by your payroll department, but you can do that however you'd like. There's any number of ways to work that out, and we take your word for it. It's not anything nutty like that. But yeah, that's how that would get set up. If that's a serious question, you can talk to your folk builder and they can get her all set up and signed up. If it's not, there's plenty of people out there that do have that question, and they can certainly get their spouse signed up that way too. We would like all spouses and adult children to participate and be members on their own. And there's something to be said for that value. When you have to actually have a commitment to something, it counts in a way that, free doesn't count as, and we've seen that a lot in different ways. There's a worth element to that that's really important. And one of the interesting things about Hoftoller is it's not a new concept. It's something that our ancestors used to do. That's actually an Old Norse word for, the tax or the percentage-based giving that was utilized in our ancestors' day to support Hofs and the Gothar that ran the Hofs. And I was reading something in The Elder Gods by Stephen Pollington that's about Asatru practiced in Anglo-Saxon England. And it was I forget which priest was, lamenting. He was on this rant. He was upset because the Asatru were showing up the Christians. They were very loyal and very generous with their donations and with their Hoftoller, whereas the Christians weren't with their tithe. And he was remarking, how the Asatru of the time were so noteworthy for their devotion, whereas the Christians, weren't willing to give a penny to support the church. But that was an interesting thing expressed, because you often don't hear that in Asatru circles. For people who have difficulty keeping their promises or oaths and have made them half-heartedly, how can they rectify that failure and reconcile with those who they've let down? Lauren, what are your thoughts on that?
Such question. Yeah, it's important for us to come to terms with everyone that we've, made an oath to, or anything like that, and if fallen short, and to, brought to account an account of, what do we feel is our what do we owe to that to that oath. And I feel that it's really important that we come forth with that oath that we feel to, and come forth. And I feel that, Alshire Gothi has more he can say about that.
Well, a couple of things. Start today. It's very easy to feel bad about the past and wait until you have the perfect solution to all your past failures. But the biggest thing that you can do, when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you got to do is stop digging. And I think this is debt in a certain way. Stop incurring more debt. Start being morally solvent in your oaths and your agreements. The other thing that I would say is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Start trying to, it's funny because the more I think of this, the more this is very much like a debt resolution thing, but in a high trust society. Like, you don't want to declare bankruptcy and be like, no, I don't owe anybody anything, I'm just going to move forward. No, what I think is important is going back and trying to reconcile your debts in a fair way, which sometimes is, a compromise on some things. What is really, I think, fundamental to our moral sense of justice isn't so much the letter of the law as far as your oath, but certainly the intent. There's it's perfectly valid for you to talk to the person you made an oath to and come to an agreement on what would make them feel whole, what would make them agree that you fulfilled your oath, or what would fix what you broke. Because that's kind of a fundamental. We talk about, in the criminal justice system, we still give lip service to the idea of paying your debt to society. We don't really do a lot of that anymore. You going to prison doesn't pay a debt to society. Society doesn't benefit from that anyway. But one of the fundamental concepts of our sense of justice is that you fix what you broke. And you can't always do that, but often you can try to compensate someone of equivalent value to whatever you failed on or you didn't do right. Maybe there's things that you swore to do in the past you didn't do. Maybe there's ways you can make that up to the person. Maybe there's ways you can actually make it up to the same quantity you agreed to. Maybe you can't, but maybe there's ways that you can move closer towards it. Like I said, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Fulfilling some of your obligations from the past is better than fulfilling none of them. And making a good faith attempt at making things right with the oaths that you haven't lived up to, there's honor and there's a value in that. There's no guarantee of forgiveness or no guarantee of like wiping the slate clean. But if you start today being very careful about your oaths and very diligent in fulfilling them, that goes to counteract the damage done to your hamenya for oaths that you haven't fulfilled in the past. You can't go back, you can't undo, but you can go back and try to compensate those that you've wronged. You can try to compensate them in the present. And that can look like different things in different ways. Like I said, and there's kind of a principle here, and there's a lot of feud culture in ancient Asatru where there'd be these blood feuds. But pretty early on, they figured out there are other ways you can compensate besides, oh, you killed one of my guys, I'm going to kill one of your guys. There was Weregild. You could pay the man price. You could compensate them in some other form for the value that you took for them. And they could maintain not only their honor, but also, whatever the physical impact was of what you've taken from them. And I think that relates to promises we make today. If you find that there's not a way to repay stuff that you broke, you can certainly find something that gets you closer than not doing anything. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and try to see what you can do to come closer to squaring the deals that you've made in the past if you're able. Again, better is better than worse. It's a strange thing to put into words because I think it's common sense, but a lot of us, just like waiting for the perfect time to join or the perfect altar set up for you to approach the gods or the perfect understanding before you can do ritual, don't wait for perfect. Do the best you can, and if you can do better, then do down the road. But right now, figure out the best you can and make the effort, because the effort does count. The effort's not all it is, but the effort is a lot of it, and it counts. And it also, your oath. So, yes, the gods judge you and your ancestors judge you because they're watching and they see what you do and they know your reputation. But your oath is between the person that you oath to, you. Compensate them very often because, okay, so when people in Abrahamic faiths conceive of sin or wrongdoing, it's not typically sinning against or doing wrong by another person. Everything you do is you doing wrong by their God. That's different in Asatru. You're not trying to square with the gods because you defrauded a person. yeah, maybe there's something you need to say before your God's about that, but it's doing right by the person you wronged. It's very specific to that contract. And the thing is, if you and I have an oath and you try to make it right with me, I have the ability to release you from your part of the oath and call it good. It's a contract and an agreement that we have amongst ourselves. And people are able to let you out of something or to make a compromise or to, forgive a debt. You're in debt to the person that you wronged. So keep that in mind too. There's a lot to be said. Sometimes to people, the thought absolutely matters, especially if it's a debt they never thought they'd be able to collect on. So keep that in mind as well. Matt and Lauren, those on the political left strike me as anti-white in all subjects. I can't reconcile left-wing politics with a love for our folk. How does it match up for you? Can you give me examples of left-wing policies that would align with our folk soul? Lauren, what are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting question. And again, I want to say that we're not a we're not a political group, but I personally grew up more on the left side of things, which would be, providing for more, left, left things for people. Yeah, I think that I think that frankly, I feel like the left party, has to deal with the anti-white thing. I grew up with a lot of rather liberal kind of things, and people didn't hate anyone. Everyone wanted to, make sure everyone had everything that people needed, but these days there is a pernicious kind of thing that is anti-white, and we have to deal with that. We have to deal with it. I know we don't like to talk about political things, but we have to deal with this. We have to deal with neutralizing this kind of anti-white kind of sentiment that is in, especially the left part of politics. So
I think that this is an interesting question that looks really different depending when you ask it.
right.
We are in a place that is polarized in such an extreme and such a specific way that, yes, the modern left in the United States is extremely anti-white. Absolutely.
It is, yeah.
But if you're dealing with people in their 70s,
Yeah,
that's not the left they grew up with. As a matter of
exactly.
fact, so just as an example of United States left not being anti-white, if you listen to the Clintons' speeches in the 1990s,
Yeah,
were explicitly pro-white, were acknowledging race things.
yeah,
If you'll
exactly.
remember, I mean, you can see what a crazy lefty Hillary Clinton is now. In the
Exactly.
1990s, she described young black males as super
Super
predators
predators. Yeah.
we need to protect our society and
Yeah.
our children from.
My father was involved with the Democratic Party. I saw the things that he did. I saw everything.
If
Yeah.
you look, and again, I'm just pointing out true things. I'm not trying to make this, whatever, but if you look at Joe Biden, and we've all seen recent examples of stuff that he does, but in the 1970s, his platform was anti-integration and that he didn't want his children to grow up in racial jungles. historically in the South, they would not elect a Republican candidate for 100 years after the Civil War because the Democratic Party on the political left was the ones opposing forcible integration and anti-white policies in the South. The political left, I think we define in a very specific way now. And I think, we're probably on an agreement in a lot of the ways, but it wasn't always that way. I think that when you look at traditional policies that would have been considered to the left, freedom of association, freedom of speech, a lot of intellectual freedoms, which ironically the current left is very opposed to, were very often considered classically liberal ideas and left ideologies by and large, for a large part of human history since we started using those terms. But a lot of the things that I'm talking about are within, our lifetimes. A lot of social programs, a lot of, providing different forms of social welfare programs towards students with free lunches, towards children getting various free services, towards poor people generally getting charitable services. Those things were all traditionally things that were championed by the left that I don't think are inherently anti our folk. I do think that the more these other policies are in place, it does make a lot of those more implicitly detrimental to our folk and beneficial to other groups of people. But, and I say this, I'm having to think outside the box because that hasn't been the case in my lifetime. I've been conservative, I've been, I guess politically you would consider me to the right all of my life. But the overlap of ideas and things was a lot more reasonable in the 1990s. I think as this century's taken shape, the left has, and people always want to say, oh, well, there's people on both sides. Yeah, there's jerks on both sides. There's people with extreme positions on both sides. But what I think we've seen overwhelmingly is the left move drastically farther to the left in a way that's beyond the pale. And what it does leave is people who grew up, especially people who find themselves like my parents' generation in their 70s and approaching their 80s, people that grew up considering themselves to the left now are in a very strange spot because the modern left has moved to things that they would all vehemently disagree with, or certainly were raised vehemently disagreeing with, but they don't consider themselves to the right either. And I think that's some of the people that we're talking to. I guess our bigger, you can be on the left and join the AFA as much as you don't have to identify yourself as being to the right to be part of the AFA. You just have to share devotion to our gods and our folk, and the rest will come, whatever you politically define yourselves as.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I would encourage anyone who's, not sure about their political leanings, perhaps, to, reach out to me. If you would like to reach out to me, if you don't know if you are part of the AFA or not, just reach out to me and I will talk to you and I will let you know you are part of the AFA.
Well, and
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So one thing also that I think is wrong in directionality. Like, your religion should affect your politics and should determine your politics, because your politics is an expression of the things that you value and the things that you believe in practical ways and practical applications. And it's possible to have differences of opinion on how those are implemented. But what I do see a lot now that I do think's wrong-headed conceptually. Your politics shouldn't determine your religion.
Right.
Religion and your values and beliefs are eternal. Politics are always situational. Now, there's political themes that you can apply more broadly, but in general, they have everything to do with the context of your circumstance. Whereas your relationship to the gods, the relationship to your folk, those things exist beyond circumstance. And that should guide, how you act politically. Just because we're not a political action committee doesn't mean that we would discourage anybody from interacting and engaging in politics. Please, by all means, do that. Be politically active in the world that you live in. Take part in the decisions and the things that shape the world around us. But don't confuse being obnoxious in the streets with, lobbying for bills or running for office or doing actual political things. I think we categorize a lot of things as political that aren't necessarily politics in a meaningful way. They're often, social expression is not the same as politics. And I think sometimes we confuse those two.
Yeah.
And that's not to villain. It's not to speak disparagingly of any one of those things. It's just to say we tend to lump those two as if they're the same things. Quote unquote street activism or pamphleting or whatever else, I think is one category. And I don't often think folks think about, participating in actual political institutions, actual campaigning, and actual political processes as being, how they engage with politics. And there's a lot of room there. But the point is, when you join the Asatru Folk Assembly, agreeing with the Trulagmal and agreeing with our loyalty to the ICER, that's what this is about. And you don't need to fear that maybe you're not, you don't, because that is our point of commonality, and that's what we bond around. And you don't need to feel left out or not part of the group if you don't participate in the same, in the same political events that maybe other people do. That's not relevant to your AFA existence. Do we have any more questions for either Lauren or myself this evening?
It's just important to realize that we have a lot of, ideological views. And if you have an ideological view that you feel is, for some reason, outside of the AFA, just let me know, and I would love to talk to you about this. I would love to talk to you about this, and I would love to talk to you about how you fit in to the AFA, because you do.
So if you have any and all questions for any of us, reach out to any of the Gothar, reach out to myself. Be happy to talk to anybody about anything. If you want us to answer questions on VNS at runestone.org. And if you want to just ask Lauren questions, L. Anderson at runestone.org. So reach out, participate, come to Midsummer, come to Sigerbloat, go to a Hoff, touch grass, as the kids say, get out there and do Asatru in real life. And if you are hearing this and you are a heterosexual white person, come home to Troth to the Gods, come home to Asatru, come home to the Asatru Folk Assembly. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Lauren. It's been great having you on the show. I will see you guys next week when Svan and I continue with, I believe, part 5 of our study of the Volsungni saga. Until then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.